Remember when watching something Christmas-related on television didn't mean scouring 5 streaming platforms? There was only one chance a year to see Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and the saddest Christmas tree in the world. A Charlie Brown Christmas premiered on CBS in December 1965, bringing Charles Shaw's comic strip characters Charlie Brown, Lucy, Linus, Snoopy, and the whole gang to the screen in what was originally a simple one-time experiment. It became a tradition that was repeated year after year until it felt less like a TV special and more like that relative who always shows up in December, whether you like it or not. Today, I bring you 15 fun and surprising facts about A Charlie Brown Christmas, from the chaos it caused at the TV network to the music executives tried to cut, and even the hidden product placement in plain sight. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe for more analysis of the shows and specials we grew up with. Now, let's get started with the facts. Number 15. The product placement you never saw. The Christmas special most famous for criticizing the commercialization of Christmas, A Charlie Brown Christmas, originally aired with Coca-Cola commercials integrated directly into the animation. These weren't separate commercials or messages between scenes. They were within the program itself. It all started in the opening scene, that classic moment when Snoopy grabs Linus's blanket and spins him and Charlie Brown around on the ice. In the version we all know, Charlie Brown flies off and crashes into a small tree. We assume that Linus also gets thrown off, but we never see him land. The shot cuts just before that. However, those who saw the original 1965 broadcast did see it. Linus crashed directly into a Coca-Cola billboard, perfectly framed as if it were a natural part of the story. When the brand's sponsorship ended, that scene was removed, which is why, in current versions, Linus simply disappears from the shot as if a frame had been deleted. The ending was even clearer. After everyone sings "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," the original broadcast did not end with a simple fade to black. Instead, the message, "Merry Christmas from the people who bottle Coca-Cola, very festive and very carbonated," appeared. So, what happened to all that? Coca-Cola ended its sponsorship in the late 1960s, and future sponsors were unwilling to give free publicity to another company. In addition, new FCC rules required a clear separation between content and advertising in children's programs. As a result, shots featuring Coca-Cola products had to be removed, and editors patched up the scenes as best they could. In the end, Charlie Brown wasn't just fighting the commercial spirit of Christmas, he was also battling the literal product placement embedded in his own stage. So ironic that it almost seems like a work of art in itself. Number 14. The star that never spoke. Snoopy goes through the entire special without saying a single word. While Charlie Brown desperately searches for the true meaning of Christmas and a little self-esteem along the way, Snoopy quietly steals the show. He doesn't utter a single word in English, yet he manages to be the most expressive, energetic, and entertaining character in all of A Charlie Brown Christmas. And the best part is that his behind-the-scenes story makes him even more charming. All those characteristic sounds, the barks, laughs, squeals, howls, and that strange sniffle, tear he makes when he overacts, came directly from director Bill Melendez. He recorded himself making meaningless noises and then sped up the recordings until they sounded like the babbling of a beagle in the middle of a Christmas party. The result was perfect, but the most ironic thing is the role Snoopy plays in the story. While Charlie Brown harshly criticizes commercial Christmas, Snoopy enters a Christmas decoration contest to win cash. He puts on a huge show full of flashing lights and over-the-top decorations, as if he were participating in an early episode of a decoration war. Charlie Brown's reaction says it all. "My own dog has gone commercial. I can't stand it. It's perfect." Snoopy is literally the embodiment of everything his owner detests. The animators also loved working with him, much more than with the human characters. Charlie Brown and Lucy's round heads were a geometric headache. Everything had to be exact, which made the animation progress slowly. But Snoopy was pure freedom. He could stretch, shrink, roll, jump, spin, fly. He was like a rubber cartoon character living in a world of mathematical rules. That's why he has the best action scenes, the falls on the ice, the frantic decorating of his little house, and his epic solo dance. Snoopy was the animator's playground, and there's a small detail that almost no one noticed. In the original 1965 version, Snoopy appears singing along with the children in "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." His mouth moves as if he were singing the carol, which is adorable. but it completely breaks the logic of the Peanuts universe. That's why in later broadcasts, they corrected the scene so that he simply smiled. Snoopy never overshadows the central message of the special, but he certainly steals every scene he appears in. He is pure charm, pure chaos, and the only dog on television capable of winning a decorating contest and ice skating better than most humans, all without saying a single word. Number 13. Lucy Van Pelt, the queen of bad temper, the unlicensed therapist, the miniature dictator, was not born out of nowhere. Her inspiration came directly from the real life of Charles Schulz. Lucy is based on Doris Friedman, the first wife of the creator of Peanuts. They married in 1951 and were together for almost 25 years. According to friends and biographers, Doris not only resembled Lucy, she was Lucy, strong, direct, with an opinion on everything, and always ready to tell you exactly what to do and how to do it. She was practical, organized, and sometimes a little bossy. She had a clear vision of everything, from household matters to creative decisions. Schulz, on the other hand, was a quiet, introspective man who was averse to conflict. Does that dynamic sound familiar? It's the same one we see between Charlie Brown and Lucy in the comic strips. That tension was no accident. It was a reflection of their daily life. Schulz himself admitted that he poured his most poignant thoughts into Lucy, the frustrations he didn't dare express in person. Lucy was his outlet, the way he let out that part of himself that he didn't show to the world. He even used the same term to describe them both: a fuss budget, someone a little bossy, demanding, always in charge, and convinced they are right. And it worked. That characteristic energy became the heart of many unforgettable moments in Peanuts, especially in A Charlie Brown Christmas, where Lucy directs the Christmas play like a little stage tyrant. So the next time you see Lucy charging 10 cents for a piece of advice or taking the ball away from Charlie Brown at the last second, remember, Schulz was writing from experience. Number 12. The character everyone thinks was there. Peppermint Patty is one of the big stars of the Peanuts universe, a baseball legend, a lover of sandals, and a symbol of pure confidence. That's why many assume that, of course, she must appear in a Charlie Brown Christmas. But no, she doesn't appear for even a second. The reason is simple. Peppermint Patty didn't exist yet. She didn't debut in the comic strips until August 22, 1966, almost a year after the Christmas special premiered in December 1965. So the special only includes the original characters from the neighborhood: Charlie Brown, Lucy, Linus, Snoopy, and the initial cast. However, there is a Pat in the story, and that's where the confusion arises. During the famous dance scene, the girl with the bow in her hair dancing with Violet is the original Patty, one of the first characters created by Schulz. She had a completely different personality and a much simpler design. Over time, that first Patty disappeared from the comic strips, replaced by Peppermint Patty, who arrived with more depth, a softball glove, and the most iconic sandals in the animated world. The confusion didn't end there. Peppermint Patty became so popular that years later, she appeared on products, posters, and even on the covers of Charlie Brown Christmas DVDs, even though she was never part of that special. Entire generations grew up remembering her in a story she was never in. In short, the most curious fact about Peppermint Patty and the 1965 special is this: she was never there because she wasn't born yet. Number 11. The Christmas Miracle Behind the Scenes. This production was literally crazy from day one. Coca-Cola decided to sponsor the special very late in the year, leaving producer Lee Mendelson and animator Bill Melendez with only 6 months to write, cast, record the voices, animate, compose the music, and edit half an hour of television. In 1965, that was almost like asking someone to carve a statue by hand while running a marathon. Still, they did it. The team delivered the finished special to CBS just 10 days before its premiere on December 9th. In television terms, that's equivalent to saying, "We're going to air it, whether it's ready or not." The remaining 9 days were spent correcting the sound, adjusting the editing, adding music, and praying that nothing would break down at the last minute. The final scene, with the decorated tree and the children singing "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," was completed practically at the last second. It was the animated equivalent of finishing your homework just as the teacher is collecting the papers. Even the creators thought they had failed. When Mendelson and Melendez saw the first cut, Melendez muttered, "Oh my God, we ruined it." But the reality was quite the opposite. Under enormous pressure and a deadline shrouded in pure panic, the team managed to create a Christmas classic that, almost 6 decades later, continues to fill screens with nostalgia every December. Number 10. Aluminum trees. There was a time when Christmas trees weren't green or natural. They were silver, metallic, perfectly symmetrical, and had lights that spun while a colored spotlight bathed them in futuristic reflections. It was the 1960s, and those aluminum trees represented the modern, the sophisticated, what a family aspired to be. They were a way of saying, we love Christmas, but we also love the future. In 1965, owning one was a status symbol. Catalogs proudly displayed them. Families installed them to impress their neighbors, and living rooms looked like department store windows. It was the triumph of design over nature until Charlie Brown entered the scene. In the Christmas special, the little protagonist walks among a bunch of shiny metal trees. They all look perfect, identical, industrialized, but also cold, completely empty. At that moment, Charlie Brown sees clearly what millions still do not, that Christmas was becoming a competition of appearances. In an almost symbolic act, he chooses the ugliest, weakest, and most honest tree in the place, a stick with 3 branches and a star that almost knocks him over. But it was real, natural, imperfect, and for that very reason, deeply human. The message hit hard. Americans understood it instantly. Within weeks of the special's broadcast, sales of aluminum trees plummeted. From being an icon of good taste, they became a symbol of falsehood. A year later, the fad was practically dead. Today, those trees are only found in vintage stores or in the garages of people who never throw anything away. But their decline marked a cultural shift. It was the moment Charlie Brown rescued the authenticity of Christmas. With a single gesture, a cartoon kid achieved what no advertising campaign had ever managed. He reminded the public that the Christmas spirit doesn't shine with artificial lights, but in simple, real, heartfelt details. Number 9. The iconic dance scene almost didn't happen. Today, it's hard to imagine Charlie Brown's Christmas without that magical moment when Linus and Lucy plays and all the characters begin to move with uncoordinated joy. But in reality, Charles Schulz didn't want to include it. His original idea was for the special to have the same tone as the comic strip, quiet, reflective, with lots of dialogue and little action. He couldn't imagine the characters dancing. It was Belil Melendez who convinced him that the story needed movement, something visual to break the stillness. And thank goodness he insisted, because without him we would never have seen those children move as only children can. The funny thing is that no one choreographed anything. There were no guides, no rehearsals, no references. The animators simply drew what they remembered from school dances: clumsy steps, head shakes, uncoordinated feet, and that mixture of shyness and enthusiasm that children have when they dance without worrying about doing it right. Nothing was planned, and yet everything turned out perfectly. Each movement was imprinted on the collective memory as if it had always belonged to those characters. Even the characters in the background have their curiosities. The 2 girls bouncing are numbers 3 and 4, a joke by Schulz about suburban life where everything seems the same. No one understood it in 1965, of course, but there it was. PCK Penn, for his part, is the only one capable of dancing while raising a cloud of dust around him. Pure chaos turned into animated magic. What's more, that sequence helped save the production. With a tiny budget and only 6 months to make the special, the animators needed to fill time without having to draw every new frame. So they created repeated dance cycles that gave a sense of life and rhythm. It was a practical solution, disguised as genius. And that's the biggest trick. Everyone is dancing a little out of rhythm. Vince Guaraldi's melody is syncopated, unpredictable, and difficult to follow for anyone who isn't a musician. But those little missteps make the scene feel more real, more childlike, more honest. It's the kind of imperfection that conveys truth. What started as a simple attempt to save time and add some movement ended up becoming one of the most beloved and parodied scenes in the history of animation. An explosion of improvised joy that captures exactly what childhood is: energy, disorder, and a rhythm of its own that needs no one's approval. And every time that piano plays, it's impossible not to move, even if it's just your shoulders a little. Number 8. At first, A Charlie Brown Christmas was not meant to be a classic. It was going to be something modest, a small animated experiment made with almost no expectations, a nice special that would air once, receive a few reviews, and then disappear into oblivion. No one at CBS or on the creative team imagined that they were about to change the history of television forever. Before 1965, animated programs were ephemeral. They aired once, were enjoyed in the moment, and then were gone with no chance of ever seeing them again. There were no reruns, no VCRs, no second chances. They were fleeting, disposable events with no emotional continuity for the audience. But when A Charlie Brown Christmas premiered, something changed. The special was an immediate success, an unexpected phenomenon that moved audiences far more than the network had imagined. Suddenly, CBS realized it had something bigger than just a program on its hands. It had a ritual. They decided to make it an annual broadcast, which was revolutionary in the 1960s. At that time, if you wanted to watch something, you had to be in front of the TV at exactly the time it was broadcast. There was no option to pause, record, or rewind. That's why every December, families organized their routine around that one event. It was marked in the TV guide with a red circle, as if it were a doctor's appointment, but one that everyone wanted to keep. Homes were filled with the sound of Vince Gualdi's piano and Charlie Brown's shy voice, wondering what Christmas really means. That was the birth of what would later be known as appointment television, the kind of program that brings audiences together at the same time, year after year, and transforms a simple broadcast schedule into a family tradition. CBS saw the impact and understood it very quickly. A good animated special was not filler in the programming, but an emotional goldmine, something that could be repeated without losing its magic. Soon, other networks imitated the model. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, and The Grinch Who Stole Christmas arrived. They all followed in the footsteps of that melancholic boy who chose the smallest and most sincere tree in the lot. Together they turned Christmas television into a genre of its own, a kind of shared ritual that is repeated every year, almost like an act of collective memory. Today, we no longer wait for the TV schedule. We just open an app or a platform and select the special whenever we want. But even though the screens have changed, the excitement remains the same. That moment when the tree lights illuminate the room and Linus and Lucy begins to play still transports millions of people to the same place, to the memory of a simpler, more sincere Christmas. Number 7. The most famous dog in animation history did not always live in a red house. In A Charlie Brown Christmas, Snoopy doesn't have that iconic red house that we see today on mugs, t-shirts, Christmas decorations, and movies. In the first Peanuts television special, his house was blue, and it wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate decision. In the original comic strip, Charles Schulz never assigned a specific color to Snoopy's house. This gave the animation team complete freedom when they brought the Peanuts universe to color television for the first time. But there was a problem: the color red. In the 1960s, color broadcasting was still in its infancy. Red was a technical nightmare. On televisions of the time, it tended to bleed, distort, or look like a ketchup stain on the screen. So the animators decided to play it safe and chose a more stable, cool blue tone that contrasted perfectly with the snowy backgrounds of the special. During that 1965 special, Snoopy's blue house became an essential part of the winter aesthetic of the Peanuts world, simple, serene, and perfectly integrated into the white landscape. But when the next specials came along, such as The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and A Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, the color changed for good. Red became his identity, and with the rise of merchandising, that intense shade became forever etched in popular culture. Since then, Snoopy and his red house have been inseparable. They appear together on toys, posters, movies, and any object bearing their name. But in television history, his home was born blue, a small, almost forgotten detail that reveals a lot about the experimental beginnings of color animation. Number 6. In the weeks leading up to the premiere, producer Lee Mendelson couldn't sleep. He was convinced that A Charlie Brown Christmas was going to be a monumental disaster. He paced the halls of his office, reviewing every decision that, according to him, would seal his professional ruin. The special was slow, introspective, lacking the visual flashes and chaotic energy that dominated children's television in the 1960s. But what tormented him most was the jazz soundtrack, too elegant, too strange for a Christmas program. However, on December 9, 1965, everything changed. The special aired, and in just half an hour, the entire United States fell in love with Charlie Brown. The melancholic tone, sincere warmth, and simplicity of the story struck a chord that no one expected. Critics praised it, families loved it, and CBS realized it had a treasure on its hands. What seemed like a sure failure became an instant cultural phenomenon. In 1966, the miracle was confirmed. A Charlie Brown Christmas won the Emmy Award for Best Children's Program. Lee Mendelson and animator Bill Melendez took the stage alongside Charles Schulz, and it was Schulz who delivered the perfect line straight from the heart of the comic. Charlie Brown isn't used to winning, so we thank you. Short, honest, unforgettable. Shortly after came the Piety Award, which highlighted the tenderness, sensitivity, and emotional realism of the special in a medium dominated by exaggeration and noise. Those awards not only validated the team's work, but also proved that success was not a matter of luck. Number 5. Linus's blue blanket is almost another character in the Peanuts universe. He carries it everywhere, sleeps with it, defends it from Lucy as if it were a treasure. It is his emotional refuge, his shield against the world. But in A Charlie Brown Christmas, that simple piece of cloth becomes something deeper, the heart of the special. It all happens at Charlie Brown's lowest point. Overwhelmed by an empty Christmas, consumerism, and his own sadness, he ends up exploding. Is there no one who knows what Christmas is all about? Then Linus, the quiet and thoughtful boy, steps forward, asks for a spotlight, and with the calm of someone who understands more than he appears to, begins to recite the story of Jesus' birth straight from the Gospel of Luke. And in the midst of those words, something imperceptible but immense happens. When he says, "Fear not," Linus drops his blanket to the floor. He does so without hesitation, without realizing it, as if something inside him has finally calmed down. It's such a small gesture that you might miss it if you're not paying attention, but it has enormous symbolic weight. Linus, who never lets go of his blanket, lets it go just as he speaks about faith and hope. It is the only moment in the entire special when he appears without it. Charles Schulz did not do this by accident. He wanted the audience to feel it without explanation. Faith conquers fear. Linus does not cease to be who he is or overcome his insecurities, but for a second he reflects what it means to find security in something greater than oneself. And as the scene progresses, the blanket returns, but no longer as a symbol of fear. When the other children make fun of Charlie Brown's small, rickety tree, Linus wraps it in his trusty blanket and says, "Maybe it just needs a little love." That act changes everything. The tree, which previously seemed like a metaphor for defeat, becomes hope, something alive, dignified, beautiful. That blanket sheltering a tiny tree sums up the entire message of the special. Even the most fragile can flourish if someone believes in it. In that silent gesture, Charlie Brown's Christmas reaches its most powerful simplicity. Fear dissipates, faith becomes visible, and a child's innocence manages to capture a truth that still resonates decades later. Number 4. Today, the Charlie Brown Christmas soundtrack is as essential to Christmas as lights or the tree. Listening to Linus Lucy is like returning to childhood. The carpeted floor, the TV on, and your parents arguing about the tinsel. But that distinctive sound, the soft and melancholic one that defines the special, almost didn't make it onto the airwaves. It all started by chance. Producer Lee Mendelson was riding in a taxi in San Francisco when he heard "Cast Your Fate to the Wind" by the Beans. As soon as he got out of the car, he knew that this was the perfect musician to accompany the world of Charlie Brown. Waraldi agreed to compose for a documentary called A Manned Charlie Brown, which was never released, but left behind a handful of demos that would change the history of animation. When CBS began production on the Christmas special, many thought that jazz was the wrong choice. They thought it was too sophisticated, not childlike enough, almost experimental. They wanted something more cheerful and predictable, like the music in cereal commercials. But director Bill Melendez rebelled and used Waraldi's recordings in secret. To his surprise, they fit perfectly. The sound of the piano, full of melancholy and warmth, captured the essence of the Peanuts universe, tender, nostalgic, and deeply human. When Schulz heard the final mix, he had no doubts. That music wasn't just accompaniment, it was the soul of the special. Shortly thereafter, the Vince Guaraldi Trio released the album that would become a smash hit with songs like "Christmas Time Is Here," "Skating," and "Oanbum." Not only did it triumph in sales, but it also defined the timeless sound of Christmas. Decades later, the album was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, cementing its legacy. Gualdio composed a perfect soundtrack and taught jazz to millions of children without them even noticing. He made Christmas sound elegant, warm, mature, and at the same time innocent. CBS wanted to eliminate jazz, but time proved them wrong. Since then, Christmas simply doesn't sound the same without that piano that turned nostalgia into magic. Number 3. The characters were not actors. Have you ever wondered why the characters in A Charlie Brown Christmas sound so authentic? The reason is simple. They were not actors. Producers Lee Mendelson and Bill Melendez decided not to hire professional voice actors, but to use real children with no training or experience, just kids with imperfect, natural voices. They wanted the characters to sound like real children, not adults pretending to be children. That's how Peter Robbins came to be Charlie Brown, Christopher Shee came to be Linus, and Tracy Stratford came to be Lucy. Their recordings were full of pauses, laughter, and hesitations. Some of them couldn't even read well. Katie Steinberg, the voice of Sally, had to repeat line by line as Melendez dictated them to her. The engineers then pieced each word together like a puzzle. That slow, clumsy, and sincere tone that we now identify with Peanuts was not an artistic choice. It was pure reality. Everything was recorded in a single day, chaotic and adorable. Between distractions and laughter, Melendez tried to maintain control and then joked that directing them was like trying to direct rabbits. But out of that chaos, magic was born. The voices were raw, emotional, real. They captured exactly what Schulz wanted to show. Children facing a world they don't always understand, but try to understand anyway. At a time when children's television was full of forced performances and perfect voices, the Peanuts characters sounded authentic, imperfect, and deeply human. What began as a practical measure ended up giving the special its greatest charm, that childlike honesty that 60 years later still seems completely genuine. Number 2. Charles Schulz did not negotiate. When production began on A Charlie Brown Christmas, the creator of Peanuts arrived with a list of rules that he treated almost like commandments, and thanks to them, the special still works 60 years later. His first rule was clear: no adults doing children's voices. At the time, that was common practice. Animated programs used adult actors who forced high-pitched tones to imitate cartoons. Schulz hated it. He wanted real children with pauses, mistakes, and moments of hesitation. That imperfection was what made them authentic. His second rule: no canned laughter. In the 1960s, all comedies depended on it. But Schulz believed that the audience didn't need a machine to tell them when to laugh. He preferred silence, awkward glances, and sad moments. He wanted emotions to be genuine, not manufactured. And the third rule: yes, there will be religion. CBS executives panicked when Schulz insisted on including Linus's recitation of the Gospel of Luke. They warned him that it would be risky, that it could alienate the audience. He didn't give in. For Schulz, that speech was the heart of the message, reminding us of the true meaning of Christmas. Each of his no's saved the special from becoming just another one. Thanks to his steadfastness, A Charlie Brown Christmas not only survived the test of time, but became part of cultural history. Schulz didn't impose rules out of stubbornness, but because he knew that honesty, silence, and faith were the soul of Peanuts, and he would never allow them to be diluted. Number 1. They almost canceled Christmas. When CBS executives first saw A Charlie Brown Christmas, they didn't think they had a classic on their hands, but a problem. The pace seemed too slow to them. The voices of real children are unpolished. The jazz music was strange for a Christmas special. And to top it off, there was no laugh track to guide the audience. In 1965 television, that was almost a crime. They were convinced that failure was imminent. But there was one detail. It was too late to pull it. The network had promoted the special on television, radio, and in the press. The sponsors were committed, and the Christmas schedule couldn't be rebuilt at the last minute without causing even greater chaos. Canceling it would have been publicly admitting that they had spent weeks selling something they no longer believed in, so they had no choice but to cross their fingers and air it. What happened next went down in television history. Nearly half of the country's households turned on their televisions to watch it, and the special became an instant hit with audiences and critics alike. It won an Emmy and a Peabody Award, and suddenly that mistake became the pride of the network. CBS, which at first thought it had ruined Christmas, ended up embracing the special as if it had always believed in it. Sometimes not having a plan B is just what makes a Christmas miracle possible. Before you go, tell me in the comments, Which of these facts about A Charlie Brown Christmas blew your mind the most? And if you also grew up watching it every year? And if you like these kinds of nostalgic deep dives into classic specials and retro series, subscribe now and turn on the bell so you don't miss out on future trips down memory lane to the TV shows we grew up with.